Most lions hunt buffalo when they're desperate. When the herds have moved on and the easy prey is gone, that's when a pride takes the risk. A single buffalo weighs over 1,000 pounds. One wrong move, one bad angle, and a lion goes home with a horn through his ribs, or a broken leg that means death in the African bush. But this wasn't a pride. This was a single male, a young male, probably 4 or 5 years old, still new enough to hunting that he didn't fully understand the rules yet. The rules that say you don't hunt buffalo alone unless you want to die. What happened in those 11 minutes would remind every predator in that territory exactly why buffalo are not just prey. They're something else entirely. They're one of the few animals in Africa that will hunt you back. The herd had been moving through the floodplains since dawn. 30 buffalo, mostly females and juveniles, scattered across grassland so dry the dust rose with every step. The rainy season had been weak. The water sources were running low. The herd was stressed, constantly moving, constantly looking for better grass, better water, better anything. The young lion had been tracking them since early morning. His name, or what the rangers called him, was Scarface. Though he didn't have that scar yet, it was going to come later, much later, from something that would teach him exactly what the cost of ignorance could be. He was hungry. That was the primary thing driving him forward. Lions spend most of their time resting, conserving energy, but the pride he'd been born into had kicked him out 3 months ago, right around the time his mane started growing dark. He was competition now, too big to be cute, not big enough to be useful, just a young male taking food that could go to the females and their current cubs. So he hunted alone. He'd gotten lucky a few times. A warthog here, an impala there, but nothing that stuck with him, nothing that filled the constant ache in his stomach. Every day was thinner than the last. Every day his ribs showed more. Every day the survival instinct got louder. The buffalo herd was moving slowly, which meant he had a chance. They weren't running, just walking, grazing occasionally, moving toward what they probably thought was better territory. They had no idea a predator was following them. Or maybe they did. Maybe they just didn't care yet. He stayed downwind, using the scattered bushes and the rise and fall of the grassland to keep himself hidden. His body was low, his breathing controlled. Everything about his approach said he understood the basics of hunting. But understanding the basics and understanding how to stay alive are two completely different things. The herd shifted direction toward a waterhole in the distance. The young lion recognized this as opportunity. Waterholes were predictable. Animals always came back to them. If he could separate one from the group at the water, he might have his chance. But what he was really watching was the calves. There were 3 of them in the herd, all young, all relatively small compared to the adults. One in particular caught his attention. A young male calf, maybe 3 months old, already showing signs of the strength he would eventually have, but not close to being there yet. This was the one. The young lion had learned from his few successful hunts that small meant survivable, big meant dangerous. He'd seen an older lion take a buffalo calf before, back when he was still with his pride. The technique was simple: separate the calf from the mother, take it down hard and fast before anything could intervene, except the mother was already watching. That's what he didn't account for. Buffalo mothers aren't like gazelle mothers or impala mothers. They don't scatter and hope. They position themselves between anything that even smells like a threat and their calves. They make a choice: stand and fight, or run. This mother had clearly made her choice. She was a big female, probably 10 years old, which in buffalo means she'd fought before. She'd defended calves before. She carried scars on her shoulders from past encounters. She knew what a predator looked like at a distance, and she knew what it looked like when one got serious. The young lion made his move just as the herd was starting to drink. He came out of the grass moving fast but not full speed. Not yet. He was testing, seeing how the herd would react. Most of the time, 1 or 2 buffalo would bolt and the rest would follow, and he could try again later. This time was going to be different. The mother charged before he'd even closed half the distance. It wasn't a test. It wasn't a warning. It was full commitment. All 800 pounds of her moving faster than something that big should be able to move, her head lowered, her horns set. The young lion had maybe half a second to make a decision: back off and live, or hold his ground and find out what happens. He chose the wrong thing. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was pride, the kind that young males have before experience teaches them to respect death. Maybe he just froze. Either way, he didn't run. The mother hit him from the side, not head-on, which would have been worse. Her horn caught him on the shoulder, slicing open skin and muscle. It wasn't a direct puncture, which saved his life, but it was hard enough to spin him sideways and knock him off balance. He hit the ground hard, dust flying. His mind suddenly focused on the single fact that he'd made a terrible mistake. He tried to stand immediately. That's what predators do. They try to create distance, try to reset, try to run, if running is what they need to do. But the mother was already turning, already coming back. Buffalo don't do one charge and leave. They press their advantage. They keep coming. She hit him again, this time more directly. Her horns caught his front legs, and he went down hard. He was on his back for a moment, completely exposed, and that's when he understood. This was going to be bad. He rolled, his instincts screaming at him to get up, to move, to do anything but stay on the ground. The mother was right there, pressing, relentless, her horns slashed at his exposed side. She was trying to gore him, trying to drive a horn deep into his body in a way that would kill. He got his legs under him and pushed sideways, breaking the contact for just a moment. Enough to scramble backward, enough to put a few yards of distance between them. His shoulder was burning. His side felt like fire. He was bleeding from at least 3 different wounds. His mind was flooded with panic and pain and the absolutely crushing realization that he was losing this fight. But he still didn't run. Not yet. The mother came again, and this time he tried to dodge. He moved to the side, trying to make himself a smaller target, trying to use his speed advantage. But speed doesn't matter if you're bleeding and shocked and fighting something that has decided you need to die. He dodged the first charge, barely. Her horns missed him by inches, but he was moving wrong, moving away from the herd instead of trying to get back to open ground, and that was his second mistake. He was backing into a slight depression in the grassland, a drainage ditch that was dry but still deep enough to be a problem. His back legs started to slide down even as she came at him again. This time she caught him. Not a glancing blow, not a shoulder hit, a real, full-force contact. Her horns drove into his flank, and he felt something rupture inside. Not bone, but close. Internal damage, the kind that hunters know about from their kills, the kind that means slow death. He screamed, actually screamed, the way animals do when pain has gone beyond the normal range. It was a sound that made every other animal in the waterhole stop moving. She backed up for just a moment, probably to get better position for another charge. That moment was all the instinct that was left in him needed. He scrambled sideways and up, using the slope of the drainage ditch to help him get out. And he ran, not toward the herd, not toward anything strategic, just away. Raw panic in motion. The mother followed. She charged after him, but the distance was growing. He was faster, even hurt, even bleeding. Speed is one advantage that predators have, and he was using it now, using it for his life. The mother kept coming, but she was slower, and the gap between them kept expanding. By the time he was 100 meters away, she stopped. She turned back to the waterhole where her calf was waiting, where the rest of the herd was starting to settle again. Now that the immediate threat was gone, she had made her point. She had defended her young. That was the end of it for her. But for the young lion, this was just the beginning. He collapsed in the grass about 200 meters away and just lay there, breathing hard, his body shaking. The wounds on his shoulder and flank were deep. The bleeding was serious. He could feel it running down his side, pooling beneath him. The internal damage was impossible to assess, but definitely present. Every breath sent a spike of pain through his ribs. He lay there for probably an hour, just staying still, letting his body process what had just happened. Around him, the African bush went about its business. Birds called from the trees, insects buzzed. The wind moved through the grass. Everything was exactly the same as it had been that morning, except that a young lion had learned something that most young lions have to learn through observation rather than direct experience. Buffalo are not prey. They are predators in their own right. They don't kill for food, but they kill for protection, and they kill without hesitation. When he finally stood, it was with the careful movement of something that knows it's badly hurt. Walking was painful. Every step sent pain through his flank. The shoulder wound was starting to stiffen. He needed water. He needed rest. He needed shelter. What he actually did was start moving away from the waterhole, away from the herd, into the deeper bush where he could find cover and where the predators that hunted predators couldn't see him as easily. For the next 3 days, he barely moved, He found a spot in thick brush near a small stream and just lay there, letting the wound start to heal. His body was burning with fever from infection. The internal damage was bruising him from the inside, creating swelling that made breathing difficult. He drank from the stream when the fever got bad enough to overwhelm the pain. He didn't hunt. He didn't have the energy. On the fourth day, a leopard found him. Leopards are not lions. They're smaller, smarter, and they have a strong instinct for the easy kill. A young lion that's already injured is about as easy as it gets. The leopard approached slowly, testing, understanding that even hurt a lion is dangerous. The young lion saw him coming and did something that showed he still had survival instinct working. He got up, not to fight, because fighting was the last thing he could do, but to show that he was still a threat, still willing. The leopard studied him for maybe a minute and then walked away. Even easy kills aren't worth the risk if the prey shows teeth. For the next 2 weeks, the young lion moved slowly through the territory, hunting small things, eating what he could find. A mongoose, a couple of birds, insects when nothing else was available. His body slowly started to knit itself back together. The bleeding stopped, the fever faded, but the scars remained, visible white lines where the buffalo horn had cut through skin. The shoulder scar was the worst one. It ran from his shoulder down toward his ribs, a permanent reminder of the moment he learned not to hunt buffalo alone. Rangers who saw him a few weeks later barely recognized him. The scar across his shoulder was the most obvious thing, but there was something else too. A change in how he carried himself, a loss of the reckless confidence that young males have before they understand the price of mistakes. He stopped hunting buffalo. It took him 3 years before he got good enough at hunting larger prey to even attempt it again. And when he did, it was as part of a coalition with another young male who'd had the same experience. 2 young lions learned what one young lion couldn't learn alone. Meanwhile, the buffalo mother returned to the herd. She grazed the floodplains with her calf, who grew strong and healthy. She'd taught him something too, without ever intending to. She'd taught him that sometimes the prey fights back. She'd taught him that mothers don't quit. That's what she passed on to her calf, what became part of how he would interact with the world when he was old enough to understand it. The 11 minutes she spent defending her young had cost her nothing but adrenaline. It had cost the young lion everything he'd thought he understood about how the world worked. This is the thing about the African bush that most people don't realize. The animals that look like prey, the ones we see as vulnerable, they're often the most dangerous things in the territory. A buffalo mother isn't prey, she's a predator. A protective elephant isn't weak, she's lethal. A hippopotamus isn't just a big herbivore. It's one of the most dangerous animals on the continent. The young lion learned this through pain and blood and fear. He survived it, but barely. And every day after that, those lessons stayed with him. The herd that had produced that mother passed on her genes. 3 of her children survived to adulthood, and all 3 inherited her stubbornness, her willingness to stand and fight, her understanding that sometimes survival isn't about running away, it's about holding your ground. The young lion that became Scarface, that's what happened to him later, that gave him the name. But that first scar, the one he carried for the rest of his life, that came from a buffalo mother who understood something fundamental about being alive in Africa. Everything gets eaten, unless it doesn't, unless it's fast enough, or strong enough, or mean enough, or willing enough to fight for itself. The buffalo mother was all of those things, and for 11 minutes, she proved it to every other predator in that territory. Word spreads in the animal world, not through language, but through behavior, through presence, through the visible evidence of what happens when you make the wrong choice. After the young lion recovered, after the other predators saw his scars, they understood something. That particular buffalo herd was dangerous. That particular mother would fight. That particular waterhole wasn't as safe as it looked. The lions in the area started avoiding that section of the floodplain, not because they were afraid, but because the return on risk had changed. It was easier to hunt somewhere else. It was safer to take the impala or the wildebeest, rather than risk getting gored by a buffalo who had already proven she would do it. The mother kept her calf alive through that dry season, kept him safe through the next rainy season, kept him safe until he was old enough to fend for himself. And then she had another calf, and then another. Some of those calves didn't survive. The hyenas got one. A lion got another during a moment when the mother was separated from the group. But most of them made it to adulthood. Most of them went on to have calves of their own. And in some way that's impossible to prove, but easy to believe. They carried forward the lesson that their mother had taught them. Fighting back works sometimes, doesn't work every time. But sometimes, when you're willing to stand your ground and take the pain and keep coming, you win. That's what the young lion learned. That's what the buffalo calf learned from watching his mother. That's what the entire ecosystem learned from watching an 11-minute fight that could have gone either way but didn't. The African bush is not kind. It's not gentle. It's not a place where the weak survive unless they're smart or lucky or both. But it's also not a place where strength alone decides everything. It's a place where will matters, where the decision to fight matters, where 11 minutes of refusing to quit can change the trajectory of a life, or in the mother's case, the survival of an entire family line. Months after the encounter, rangers documented the herd in their patrol reports. The notes were simple: strong protective behavior observed, recommend maintaining distance during feeding hours. That became the unofficial rule in that territory. You don't hunt that herd. You don't test that mother. You don't go to that waterhole looking for easy prey. Because the prey taught everyone within listening distance that it wasn't easy. The young lion who became Scarface lived another 8 years after that encounter. He eventually became a dominant male, held his own territory, fathered cubs. He never became a legend the way some lions do, the kind of lion that rangers name and tourists ask about. But he was known as the scar-shoulder male, the one who learned his lesson. And if you ask any experienced tracker in that territory what the best lion teachers are, they'll tell you about predators who've been through something, who felt the weight of failure, who've learned that the world doesn't owe them easy kills or quick wins. The buffalo mother was his first real teacher. She taught him with horns and blood and the absolute commitment that comes from protecting your offspring. And that lesson, more than any natural instinct, is what kept him alive through 8 more years of a life where death is the alternative to success. This is the story that doesn't get told very often. Not because it's not dramatic, because it is. Not because it's not important, because understanding these moments is how we understand how animals truly behave. But because it doesn't have a clear villain. The lion wasn't evil. He was hungry and young and didn't know better. The buffalo wasn't noble. She was protective and willing to hurt something to keep her calf safe. Both of them were just doing what 11 million years of evolution had wired them to do. The only difference was that on this particular day, in this particular moment, the buffalo's instinct was stronger than the lion's instinct, and that made all the difference. The waterhole went back to normal after a few days. The herd recovered, the lion healed, but something had shifted in that territory. Something about how the balance between predator and prey was negotiated, about what happens when prey decides to stop being prey, even for just 11 minutes. The next time a young lion came through that territory, hungry and desperate and looking for easy kills, the older lions told him stories, not in words but in the warnings they gave, the territories they steered him away from. And he learned without needing to learn the hard way. That's how knowledge survives in the animal world. Through experience, through bloodstains that mark a place, through the visible evidence of what happens when you make the wrong choice. The buffalo mother is probably gone now. If enough time has passed, that's how nature works. Animals age, animals die, and something new takes their place. But her calf is probably still alive, somewhere in that territory or another, teaching his own offspring about standing ground, about fighting when you need to fight. And that young lion, Scarface, if he's still alive, carries the physical evidence of her lesson every single day. Every time he looks in still water and sees his shoulder, he sees the moment he understood that hunger doesn't give you the right to take what isn't safe to take. 11 minutes. That's how long it took to teach a predator respect. 11 brutal, bloody, intense minutes in the grass, while the herd watched and the sun beat down and the African bush stayed exactly as it's always been. Indifferent, intense, and absolutely unforgiving to those who don't understand its rules.